If you look around, there have been a number of busy meetings, shall we say, on the part of financial people. The chairman of the Federal Reserve a week or two ago, Janet Yellen, was summoned to the White House for an urgent meeting with President Obama. Now, I think I could explain what that one's all about. What that one's all about is the numbers that have been coming out, the jobs numbers, the economic recovery numbers, and all of those other related numbers have not been so great. And oh, alas, this is an election year. And therefore, guess what? That's why they are very, very concerned, because typically economics makes or breaks an election. There have been other meetings going on. Back in April, there was a secret meeting that involved more than 100 executives from some of the biggest financial institutions in the United States. This was held in New York City. During this meeting, a company known as Chain apparently unveiled a technology that transforms U.S. dollars into pure digital assets. And apparently they were representatives from, NASDAQ, Citigroup, Visa, Fidelity, Pfizer, all of the others. Bloomberg talked about it. But in the other media, these meetings don't get much attention because people generally don't understand a lot of what's going on. And even if they did, they probably don't want to know about it. And that's what's really determining the background of where we are and where we're headed. So Michael Snyder's joining me again from the Economic Collapse blog. New digital cash system being prepared in secret, ? And Michael, I've been watching some of these meetings going on. Henry Kissinger was shuttling over to talk to Vladimir Putin. That was about, a couple of months ago. You know and I know that the dollar is approaching the end of its longevity. Now, there are people talking about the total collapse of civilization as we know it. But, I think the powers that be, they're not stupid, and they have a longer-term goal. So they will allow this next onrushing crisis to maneuver us into the next stage of wherever it is they intend to put us.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And this, for example, the secret meeting in New York that you just referred to, I think is so important. And you and I and the rest of the public may have never even heard about it if not for this one article in Bloomberg. And it didn't get a ton of attention in the mainstream media. But what happened at this meeting, and it was just last month, it was in an office right off of Times Square, right in the heart of New York City. And more than 100 executives from some of the biggest financial institutions in the United States gathered together at this one office to see this presentation by this company known as Chain. And so what they showed and demonstrated was a way to take U.S. dollars and to turn them into pure digital assets. Now, we're all used to using, our debit cards or, transferring money from one bank account to another. But this is different. This is intended to replace Bitcoin, to replace actually our physical dollars, where the dollars would become basically digital. And they wouldn't necessarily be linked to your bank account or to anything else, but the digits themselves would be the dollars. And basically the idea is that as we go to this cashless society, ultimately we wouldn't use paper currency or physical coins at all anymore, but that everything would be digital. And so they figured out this way to basically make money, currency, into a digital form. And so, in the past, we're used to, okay, we do something and then it transfers money from our bank account to someone else and then it's settled in a few days. But this would happen instantly. Wherever you have in your computer, in your phone, whatever, you have these digital money stored. It's not even linked to your bank account, but then you would pay for something and boom, instantly it would be transferred to the other party. And so this is being referred to as revolutionary technology that is completely intended to change the way we even think and use money. But of course, this was revealed at this secret meeting in front of top executives. It's not really meant for consumption by the general public yet, because if the general public kind of got wind of this, well, a lot of us, especially a lot of us Christians, are not exactly too keen on transitioning to a cashless society.
But that's the way it's going. I mean, that's like biometric ID. It's going that way, whether you like it or not.
Oh, it definitely is, and it's already happening all over the world. For example, this is especially happening in Europe. Over in Sweden, at this point, 95% of all retail transactions are already cashless. And actually, so little cash is being used in Sweden at this point, they're pulling ATM machines out by the hundreds, totally removing them. In churches, in many churches in Sweden, most giving is done electronically, digitally, and even the homeless people there, the government actually gives them readers so they can take their donations. They can do their panhandling electronically. If they're selling newspapers, as the homeless do sometimes, they can, people can pay for that electronically. But so Sweden has almost entirely gone to a cashless society at this point. In fact, if you want to get on the bus, you don't pay for that with cash anymore. That's all electronic. But it's not just Sweden. Over in Denmark, government officials have a stated goal of totally eradicating cash, that's their term, by the year 2030. In Norway, the biggest bank in the entire country recently came out, and they've already gone mostly cashless, but the biggest bank is basically telling the government, hey, let's completely get rid of cash. Let's completely go to, this cashless system, because that's what they want. Because banks really like a cashless system, because for banks, if we go totally cashless, well then, we all have to be their customers and deal with them, and and they make fees, of course, when we swipe their cards or when we use their systems, whatever. So they make more money. And then, of course, governments like this because, well, they say, hey, we're going to crack down on drug dealers, on tax evaders, on money launderers, on terrorists. They saw it as a way to fight terrorism. But, of course, we lose all financial privacy in the process. Basically, if under a cashless system, basically everything we do is right there for the government, where they can track and monitor and basically watch everything we do. But we're seeing this happen literally all over the world right now.
How will it work between individuals? I mean, is it going to be tied to smartphones or, like right now, if you do something for me and I'll say, oh, here, Michael, here's $20 because you gave me $20. Just here it is. It's back. It's no big deal. It doesn't even go on record anywhere. How would we do that other than writing a check or electronically now? Because you're right. Even a lot of the checks that we write here now are electronically generated. We don't sit down and physically write a check. We still do a few of those, but not a lot. So much of it happens that way.
Yeah, I think that's where this new blockchain technology comes in, where it wouldn't even be tied to the bank account, but where we have the digits in our phone or in our computer or whatever, and it's actually cash, and then we transfer it electronically to whoever we're dealing with, whether it's an individual, whether we're in McDonald's or whatever. But this move away from physical cash, and they're trying to figure out how to do that, and they're developing these new technologies. Meanwhile, one way that you can slowly ban cash is by setting a cap on cash transactions. So, for example, over in Europe, there was just an announcement. The 500 euro note is being phased out. They're not going to make any more, once we get to 2018, I believe it is. But then in certain countries in Europe, they've actually already banned cash transactions over a certain amount. For example, all cash transactions over 2,500 euros have been banned in Spain. And then France and Italy, it's even less. They've banned all cash transactions of more than 1,000 euros. You want to go and buy a used car from someone, if it's more than 1,000 euros, you can't use cash. You've got to write a check. You've got to do something else. So that's a way to slowly ban cash by setting a cap and then bringing it lower and lower and lower. Of course, if you set the cap low enough, for example, if you say, oh, we're going to ban all cash transactions that are, over a dime, you would essentially ban cash at that point. So by setting this caps and then lowering them over time, it's step by step, you can move us in the direction of a cashless society. And of course, this isn't just happening in the Western world. Over in India, a poor country like India, the government has a major program of encouraging people to switch to debit cards and credit cards. They're even doing this among the poor people, where they're trying to get them cards, trying to get them to go cashless. So all over the world, there seems to be this coordinated effort and push by governments, by banks, by financial institutions to move us away from cash and toward this cashless society. But then, of course, if we go cashless, that, I believe, opens the door for all kinds of potential tyranny.
Talking about that, Michael, when taxation becomes abusive, then tax evasion becomes a sport. And look at Europe. Large numbers of people engage in it because the taxes are abusive. They're just heavy to pay. And governments figure, rather than trimming themselves back and making themselves economical and work like a functioning organization, they go, oh, no, if we just knew everything everybody was doing everywhere, we could prevent tax evasion, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, that destroys privacy, which destroys productivity, which destroys freedom, which destroys, you can see where this whole thing's going. But we're headed there, so it's going to be interesting. Michael Snyder is my guest right now, the economiccollapseblog.com. We're at steelonsteel.com.